And the world's major oil producers announcing plans to slash oil production. The impact and response this morning.
The world's top oil producers announcing plans to slash production in a move that could push gas prices higher. How the White House is responding next.
We are not endangering the energy markets. We are providing security, stability to the energy markets.
At a price.
Everything has a price. Energy security has a price as well.
OPEC Plus announced that it will cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day. That's the biggest slash in production since the start of the pandemic. The White House called the decision from the group of major oil producers, quote, concerning and unnecessary. Now, the move undermines President Biden's controversial visit to Saudi Arabia this summer, where he tried to convince Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to increase oil production.
This just into CNN, the Biden administration is working to, quote, identify the tools to mitigate the impact on gas prices after the world's major oil producers announced a plan to slash production by 2 million barrels a day. The Biden administration calling that move concerning and unnecessary. It comes less than 2 months after Biden's controversial visit to convince the Saudi crown prince to increase production. This is about profits.
This is about profits. It's also about supporting Russia, quite frankly. And this means that this alliance of oil producers is essentially standing behind Russia and allowing Russia to have more money to fuel its war with Ukraine. And so that is a direct affront to what the White House and the rest of the West has been trying to do.
The White House is really insisting that this trip that President Biden took was not a waste of time to Saudi Arabia, and dramatic moves. The White House slamming OPEC's plan to slash oil production as officials fear it will send gas prices soaring. A top Biden administration official tells CNN the White House is now working to identify ways to mitigate the impact of a decision by OPEC Plus to decrease oil production by 2 million barrels a day, and that major impact, of course, on oil prices. The Wall Street Journal this morning reporting the Biden administration is preparing to scale back sanctions on Venezuela so that Chevron could resume pumping oil there. This would potentially reopen U.S. and European markets to oil exports from Venezuela. I know you saw that. I saw your response on Twitter this morning was one word. You said, wow. What could that mean?
Well, it's certainly a surprise move. Now, keep in mind the Biden administration has options or has been looking at options from countries like Iran and now this with Venezuela. At the same time, potentially overlooking U.S. domestic production. Now, he's going to be sitting down with executives, or the Department of Energy will be. Certainly, I think there's a lot more that can be done here in the U.S. before we turn to abroad, especially with a country like Venezuela. Certainly a lot of strings attached with that, oppression in Venezuela, and we're turning to a country. Very surprising move, but certainly one of desperation as oil prices now drifting higher ahead of the midterm elections.
You say there are several things that can be done in the U.S. to raise domestic production. Specifically, give us a sense, what can be done in the short term that will be felt in the short term?
Well, I think simply clarity from the president. I think the president has gone after the oil sector from the moment he was sworn in the Oval Office. He's been cutting down and making it plain that we will not be investing in oil, or he doesn't want to. He wants to move forward. And now we find out with Russia's war in Ukraine that was maybe a little bit ahead. And now I think he should give oil companies clarity. There's been a lot of talk about windfall taxes, none of which gives really oil companies the clarity to invest billions of dollars on raising production. So I think the president, through his narrative, has given oil companies cold feet on wanting to increase production. And I think he should sit down and make clear that there is a time for domestic oil production to go up and that he will support it for the next few years.
And gas prices in California spike to a near record high, and the White House is grappling right now with how to respond to the blow coming from OPEC. This is what we're watching at this hour. Gas prices we need to turn to right now, though, because gas is on the rise in the United States. AAA is reporting that the national average for a gallon of regular unleaded is $3.87. That's up almost 10 cents in the last week. In Los Angeles County, the sticker shock is setting in again in a real way, averaging $6.49, setting a new record there. Prices are also likely to keep rising after OPEC's big announcement announcing it's going to cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day.
Plus, the oil squeeze, how a decision by some of the world's largest oil producers could end up changing the outlook for the November election, to say nothing of helping Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. And gas prices on the rise again. The national average is up by nearly 10 cents compared to a week ago, just on the anticipation of continued crude oil increases. After OPEC then overnight announcing massive cuts to oil production on Wednesday, a move sought by Saudi Arabia and Russia. A big setback for President Biden, who was criticized for that fist bump visit with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman back in July, when he was promised some short-term oil price relief. Well, that now has evaporated. Higher gas prices coming just a month in advance, of course, of the midterms likely will hurt Democrats as Republicans zero in on inflation. Ben, let's talk about this move by OPEC. It could not have come at a worse time. It benefits Russia with its war in Ukraine, its more profits from oil, Iran, obviously the Saudis. And the White House is clearly disappointed. They took that high-risk summit on the hopes and actually the promise many reported at the time that they would get some oil relief, and there was some interim price relief, but they've now raised the prices.
Up next for us, President Biden today calling a big decision to cut oil production a, quote, disappointment, what it could mean for you the next time you fill up and what it might mean in the election. That's next. President Biden today voicing his disappointment at the OPEC Plus decision to slash oil production by 2 million barrels a day. But the president defending his trip to Saudi Arabia this summer, saying the primary focus was not oil.
There's a lot of alternatives. The trip was not essentially for oil. The trip was about the Middle East and about Israel and rationalization of positions. But it is a disappointment, and it says that there are problems.
But the optics are, when he traveled to Saudi Arabia, he had that fist bump with the Crown Prince right there, who is a murderer. And the president said, I had to do other stuff there. Republicans see this as T-ball. This is just in the last hour. Biden's energy policies have purposely crippled American energy production. Biden is begging Saudi Arabia and Venezuela for oil. Preposterous, humiliating. This is what America last looks like. These dictators ignored Biden's pleas, slashed supply, and sent energy prices soaring. Again, it's more complicated, but sometimes politics comes down to, gas prices are, we can show you the graphic, trickling back up a little bit. Bad trend for the president.
Bad trend for the president after a really great trend for the White House. And, the White House was very eager to take credit for gas prices when they were going down by nearly 100 days straight. So, of course, Republicans are going to seize on that. We spent some time talking about, Herschel Walker's troubles and kind of that October issue. I think the October surprise for Democrats may be the rising gas prices. And because that is, we talk about this all the time, gas prices are some of the most visual, goods, consumer goods out there. You see the price every day as you drive up and down the road.
And leading this hour, gas supply is about to go down and gas prices are going up. And Democrats are pointing fingers at the White House. President Biden calling the decision by the oil-producing OPEC states to cut production a, quote, disappointment. But he defended his meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, saying that was not just about oil. Though some members of his own party suggest the president perhaps got played.
The oil cartel's move could raise gas prices, hurt Democrats in the midterm elections, increase the chances of a global recession, and bolster Russia in its war against Ukraine. OPEC's move undermining the crude diplomacy Biden conducted over the summer when he personally visited Saudi Arabia and fist-bumped the Crown Prince over the objections of human rights groups in an attempt to increase the supply of oil.
And I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen.
The administration now contemplating next steps, including tapping into the strategic reserves again, despite saying 48 hours ago that wasn't on the table.
We're not considering new releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve beyond the 180 million.
With 32 days to go before the midterm elections, Republicans are putting gas prices and Biden's energy policies at the forefront.
Let's take a quick trip down memory lane, if you'll allow me, Congressman. We all remember when President Biden went to Saudi Arabia, despite the kingdom's rampant human rights abuses, and he even fist-bumped Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, despite MBS's responsibility for the very grisly murder of a Washington Post journalist. We were told the president needed to take that trip to represent and protect American interests. The White House is considering releasing more oil from the nation's strategic reserves, which would help a little in terms of easing some looming pain at the gas pump, though not really all that much. That's not really what the stockpile's for, of course. And we should note the reserves are at their lowest levels since the mid-'80s.